Hello, everyone, and thank you for attending OD Tuck's educational webinar series. Today's presentation will be titled OCI 101, What Oracle Professionals Need to Know About Oracle Cloud Infrastructure, and will be presented by Joe Malawicki. For all that have questions during this presentation, please insert them in the Q&A box and we will answer those toward the end. And for everyone who's interested in having a recording of today's webinar, it will be available on the ODTUG website by end of day. With that being said, I'll hand it over to Joe.
Great. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Okay, so all right, let's go ahead and get started here today. So today we're going to answer three things, hopefully in 30 minutes or less. What OCI is, how it's structured, and how you should start thinking about it in the context of your own environment. That's it, nothing more. Simple, super simple. Grab your lunch, coffee, whatever, and let's dive right in here. So first, thanks everyone for taking time to join us today. I know schedules are super busy. It's kind of a chaotic time of the year with year-end closes, quarter closes, and whatnot. So I'll keep this hopefully practical and focused for you to get you back to your day jobs. What I want to do today is simplify Oracle Cloud Infrastructure, or OCI. Because what I've seen is that OCI is becoming more and more important across the Oracle ecosystem. We're experiencing this firsthand. It's behind a lot of services people are already using. But at the same time, a lot of professionals, Oracle and outside of Oracle, don't feel that they have a clear understanding of how it actually works or where it fits into their organization. So, this session is not about going deep technically, okay? It's not about covering every service available to you in OCI because there are literally hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of them. It's about stepping back and answering some simpler questions. What is OCI? How is it structured? And how should you start thinking about it within your own organization? And all along the way, I'm hoping I can share some personal perspective from what we're seeing in real environments today with our own customers. And by the end, my goal is that OCI feels a lot more approachable for you and your organization and a lot more understandable than it did coming in today. So it wouldn't be an Oracle content webinar if we didn't throw in a safe harbor statement slide. So here it is. So before we get started, I just want to mention that some of the things we'll talk about might involve some future thinking. Things can change, so consider this presentation as a friendly guidance to all of you to help you understand OCI better. My goal is to make OCI less mysterious and show you practical ways that might help fit into your role. Any decisions you make are, of course, solely up to you. My name is Joe Malawicki. I'm the CEO and founder of IRX Solutions. I've been in the technology field for, 30 years now at least. I hold multiple certifications as an Oracle Cloud Architect and AI professional. What that really means is I spent decades of my life and career helping organizations like your own modernize their complex enterprise systems, right, without breaking what already works, because that's super important. And yes, I'm still probably the biggest tech nerd in the room right now. I'll throw that gauntlet out there, and anybody who wants to challenge me, give me a call afterward. In my role, I work directly with enterprise leaders, helping them navigate cloud transformation projects, data governance, and of course now AI, everyone has the AI, right? Adoption inside your mission critical environments. What I'll be sharing today isn't coming from documentation or product overviews from Oracle. It's coming from what myself and my team are actually seeing in the field today in real customer environments, okay, as teams begin to work with or evaluate OCI for their organizations. If you want to continue the conversation after this webinar, please feel free to reach out to me. We regularly share practical insights and updates on our website, blog post entries, LinkedIn posts, and of course our YouTube channel. Executive briefings and previous sessions naturally are out there. So with that in mind, let's kind of jump into a quick overview of my company and then right into the content. So really fast background about IRX Solutions. We're a full services consulting firm, 100% onshore resources, and we're certified across multiple Oracle cloud and AI platforms technologies. We've led hundreds of migrations and modernization projects, including dozens and dozens and dozens of on-premise to cloud migration projects. So again, what that means for you is that what I'm sharing, it's not coming from, again, documentation, it's coming from real experience, real world, and real challenges that we've faced and that our customers face. We're proud to say that we work with nearly every industry and vertical within the Oracle ecosystem, and our partnerships very tied closely to companies like Oracle, IBM, Deloitte, and a bunch of other large SIs, as well as smaller partners, mean we stay close to what's actually happening on the ground with the products and the roadmaps that the customers are taking. It's not just about what's in a sales pitch from your vendors. These relationships always help us to bring our proven approaches to every engagement we do. So enough with the business card and the commercial here. Let's jump into the content that you're all in here for today. So let's start by why this session even matters, why OCI matters. What's interesting about OCI or Oracle Cloud Infrastructure is that a lot of people, probably most of yourselves, are already using it today, whether you realize it or not. If you're working with any Oracle Cloud application today, those environments likely, I'm sorry, cloud application hosted by Oracle today, those environments are already running OCI underneath. That is how Oracle runs their business. That's how they run all of their SaaS tools and applications. So in many cases, OCI is probably already part of your architecture for your organization. It's not just something that you had to think about directly. Cloud adoption overall is accelerating. People are moving off on-prem at a much higher rate than they were 4, 5, 6 years ago. And most organizations are already on some kind of cloud platform, or they're moving to one actively. But here's the gap. Even with all of that, OCI itself is still not well understood or well understood in its role in the industry. Not because it's overly complex. It's actually, in my personal opinion, the easiest cloud infrastructure to deploy and implement compared to others out there. It's because most people haven't had to look at it directly or had the opportunity to. They interact with the application layer, but not the infrastructure. So what we're going to do today, hopefully, is pull back that layer a bit and make it a lot more clear on how this actually works and what approach you should take as you may or may not consider OCI for your organization. So why is OCI often overlooked? Well, if OCI hasn't really been part of your thinking, there's a reason for that. And it's a little different in how it shows up compared to something like Amazon's cloud hosting AWS or Microsoft Azure or Google Cloud. In most cases, you're experiencing, as I mentioned, OCI indirectly. You're working in your Oracle EPM, ERP, database, or other Oracle platforms. And OCI, again, it's sitting underneath all of that, but you're not actually directly controlling it or working within the confines of its technology. So it never becomes something that you spend a lot of time evaluating, maybe not even thinking about, or really building a mental model around how it could fit into your organization. Second piece of that is how cloud conversations usually start. You all probably know. If you don't, I'll share it with you. You have the big players out there. You have Amazon's the largest global market share, Microsoft's the largest corporate market share, Google Cloud's coming in third, high third. Oracle's in the top five. It's always there. It could be top four some weeks, depends on who you ask and which analyst. So it's been around for a long time, but the first discussions are not around Oracle's cloud infrastructure. And that's where the initial exploration begins to happen. OCI tends to come in later in the conversation, if at all, when you get a phone call from someone at Oracle saying, hey, do you want to buy this? Right? Let's face it. So it doesn't get nearly the same attention in the market and industry media that the other big players do today. And then, of course, there's just a limited hands-on exposure. If you're not actively building an OCI today or working with it, it's really hard to develop a clear understanding of how it's structured. So if OCI hasn't been something you've explored just yet, that's actually very, very normal. You're actually in probably the more the common norm than not. What we're going to do next is sort of break it down a bit in a way that makes it hopefully a little easier for you to understand and then hopefully take steps to evaluate if you feel that's something you want to get into. So let's simplify this. What OCI actually is. At its core, OCI is a cloud infrastructure platform, also known as IaaS or infrastructure as a service. If you, again, you've heard of Google Cloud, Microsoft, Azure, AWS from Amazon. Conceptually, it's the same idea. It's one of those same hypervisors or same organizations, platforms. Plus, I'll put a plus on that. It provides all of the standard building blocks you need to run any systems you have in the cloud, things like compute, storage, networking, database services. We'll talk about more about those in a bit. From a high level, this isn't something completely new or unfamiliar. It's the same category of platform as these other vendors have. Where it begins to differ with OCI is how it's structured and how it's optimized and how it was built, to be bluntly honest, especially for the enterprise. All the other vendors out there incorporate enterprise work after the fact. Oracle built their cloud from the beginning with the enterprise in mind. So more specifically around Oracle workloads. And we'll touch more on that as we go today. The key point here is this: OCI is a foundational layer for everything Oracle does as far as technology is concerned. And again, it's what sits underneath everything else, whether it's Oracle Cloud applications, your own custom workloads, or data platforms. You can run all those parts and pieces on Oracle's cloud infrastructure. Instead of thinking about OCI as a tool or service, think of it as the environment, the data center, your computer, if you will, everything runs on. So again, high level here, just kind of diving and dipping our toes right now, but let's kind of look and see how it's actually put together. So OCI is actually structured in a very intelligent fashion or manner. Okay, and this is where things usually begin to click as people who may be new to cloud infrastructure get exposed to it, or if you're existing, you start painting pictures and similarities in your mind. At the highest level, everything begins with something called a region. A region is simply a geographic location. Think Ashburn, Virginia, Phoenix, Arizona, London, Toronto, Singapore, you name it. There's literally dozens and dozens of regions across the globe. Very similar to what you'd see with most cloud providers. So inside each region, though, you have something called availability domains. An availability domain, easy way to think about this is your data center. As if you have an on-prem data center today, right? Within that region. Typically, there's multiple availability domains, which means multiple data centers within a geographic location. These are your physical buildings, your core infrastructure and services, literally the plug-in and wires, storage devices, backup CPU, power supplies. Okay, they're all designed to fit within a confined AD. Okay, so if one has an issue, others can completely be unaffected and pick up those workloads, right? Then inside of those availability domains, the next tier, the inside here, is you define what's called your network. Now, in OCI terms or Oracle terms, that's called a virtual cloud network or a VCN. Not getting too tech or deep dive here, but think of this as your private network in the cloud. It's where all your components communicate, similar to your corporate network. It's just hosted in OCI. It controls your routing, subnets, security rules. Basically, this is the transit system for everything running inside of OCI. So inside that network, the fourth piece is where you deploy all your resources and services, your workloads, your servers, whatever you want to run in the cloud. Okay. So there's four major components here. Everything builds from the outside in. Region, availability domain, VCN, resources. Your location, your isolation, your network, and your workloads. If you understand that four-layer structure, OCI or any tier or any cloud tier becomes much easier to navigate and understand. And one thing worth noting, these concepts, again, are not unique to Oracle. Okay, the verbiages, the languages, definitions are. Every major cloud provider uses similar models. What's different about OCI is that this entire structure was built from the ground up with the enterprise in mind. That design decision shows up everywhere once you begin to start working in it. You'll see those differences between, say, maybe working within Amazon's cloud services versus OCI. So we kind of provide a structure here a bit, right? So now let's talk a little about what actually runs inside of that structure or the core OCI services simplified. At a high level, everything comes down in OCI to four core areas, if you will. Now, I want to pause and preface here that there are literally hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of services within OCI, as there are from any cloud provider. But these are the four main concepts, if you will, or constructs that live within OCI. First off, you have your compute. These are your servers. These are the things that run your applications. It's going to be your Windows 2022 server with 8 cores of CPUs and your 100 gigabytes of RAM. Okay, this is your virtual machines, your servers, their containers. Anything that needs processing power, these servers live up in the cloud and are considered to be compute. The next component is your storage. This is where your data lives, whether it's live data for those compute instances or servers, or it could be your file systems, your backup, your internet-based storage, you name it. They call that block storage, object storage, all kinds of cool names for it. But essentially, it's your storage. It's anything that needs to persist in the cloud lives on storage, same as your hard drive on your local computer, as an example. Okay. Third is your networking components. I mentioned VCNs briefly. But the networking, this is how everything connects together. It's how your systems talk to each other, how the users reach your applications, how you connect back to on-premise environments or to other cloud platforms. Fourth, your database services. This is the big one for Oracle OCI specifically. Managed Oracle databases you know, 26 AI, your autonomous databases, you know, AI Lakehouse databases, your Cloud service databases. There's a tons of options out here. These are deeply integrated into the platform, OCI platform, in a way you typically don't see elsewhere. Single control panels to get to all this stuff. It's pretty wild how it's all put together if you haven't seen it yet. If you work in other platforms, none of these concepts, again, might seem new to you. The difference is not what they are, it's how OCI organizes these and how they tightly integrate these services and components to support the enterprise corporate workloads, specifically Oracle workloads. Same building blocks, different level of integration and design. Sorry, folks, allergy season. All right. So jumping right in here, keep moving along here on our 30-minute window, where OCI starts to feel different from other vendors. Now, this is where we come back to something I mentioned earlier. Conceptually, again, OCI is very similar to other big players out there. Core building blocks are the same. However, where it starts to feel different is how it's designed and how it's used. So first, OCI is built, I keep saying this, enterprise first, Oracle workloads first. Databases, development platforms, HCM, SCM, EPM, ERP, analytics toolsets, you name it. The platform is optimized for those systems to support the best performance and cost of ownership in a way that's more native than what you would typically see on a general purpose cloud. And we kind of call the other vendors general purposes clouds. Okay. Secondly, is your integration aspect. These database services that are core platform capabilities, they're wired into OCI. They were built from the beginning with OCI. They weren't stitched together after the fact. You don't have to go out and figure out how do I deploy my Oracle autonomous database, you know, in OCI. You literally go in, click a button, push, boom, done. You don't worry about what happens behind the scenes with this, okay? Which is a pretty cool thing as you're deploying these applications. You want to minimize your requirement for this infrastructure technology aspect of deployment services. All that work is done for you. Third is your performance and cost. Now, as I mentioned before, this presentation is rooted in real world experiences, and I will be completely honest. We have certified architects, myself included, in OCI, in AWS, and Azure, all working on my staff here at IARC Solutions. Okay, and we do a lot of deployments and assessments for customers. When OCI is evaluated side by side against any of these other platforms, doesn't make it which one they are, for enterprise workload specifically, the numbers are very compelling. Okay, on average, clients who move to OCI for any workload see about a 30% annual savings on that workload compared to their cloud infrastructure costs for a different vendor. That's not a marketing stat. That's reality. That's what we see in real engagements every single day. Honestly, we've never done an assessment. We've done dozens of these over the last couple of years alone, in inventory analysis for customer migration projects that come away with savings, you know, lower than that 30%. And usually it's much, much higher when you look at the actual cost of deploying the services. Yes, there's a cost of ownership aspect to consider. Okay, you have to know and maintain this possibly. If you don't want to use a vendor like us for managed services, you need to understand how do I run this environment in OCI. Maybe I have my techs who are all Microsoft certified. I can tell you flat out, hands down, and I'll buy you a drink if I'm wrong about this. Learning OCI is so much quicker if you know one of the cloud platforms already. It's a matter of simply point and click, recent documentation. So the cost of ownership and maintenance aspects is super reduced compared to the other vendors out there. So the last point, that's to me the most important one, right? It's 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 about a cost savings and a performance ownership aspect, and we'll dig more into that. OCI is not an all or nothing decision, by the way. It works alongside your other cloud platforms. Oracle has established this direct multi-cloud partnership relationship with Amazon, Microsoft, and Google. So this is not replacing what you have. A lot of times we see customers adopting, they want to get some Oracle tech, like say Oracle database, and run that within their Microsoft Azure cloud. That's completely available because now there's a Oracle cloud at Microsoft. Okay, so those exist today. Same billing, same price structures. Again, not about all of the decisions here. It's about understanding where OCI may or may not fit within your own organization and conversation. So kind of bringing this back home a bit, where OCI does show up in the real world, real environments, where do we see it? So you're probably, again, already using this without realizing it, as you mentioned. And this is the earlier point comes back into play. OCI is already powering a lot of those systems, believe it or not. You're just not interacting with it, as I mentioned. So the core business systems and applications you do have, they are on OCI. You already have that business argument for your organization management that, yep, we are already Oracle Cloud consumer, whether you're being metered that way or not. Um, the second point, and this is actually a big entry point we do for a lot of customers, is disaster recovery and backup solutions. OCI we see very often being used as a secondary environment for failover, replication, or improving your business continuity and resilience of your systems. Now, I personally love the DR story because it gives customers a low cost entry point into developing and trying out OCI services. You're not risking your production environments or systems, right? You can set up your tenancy, your structure, move maybe one of your systems up in there. Maybe it's an old legacy JDE system or a Hyperion system or some databases, and you can see how this works. And if you don't like it, guess what? Your investment is super minimal. You can whack that project, move on next system, and go ahead and from there. Okay. So DR is a great example of where we see it in real world environments today. Data platforms, analytics, I apologize. Things your pipelines, reporting environments, integrations. This is a huge growing area right now. There's tons of new services available in OCI specifically around the data platform concept. Um, they're actually, Oracle's one of the front leading companies developing a data platform strategy for the enterprise, which is kind of cool. And that's all, again, grounded and running via OCI. And of course, again, a webinar in 2026, AI and automation, right? You got to mention AI every time you talk about anything technology based, but we're seeing a lot of organizations more and more beginning to experiment here, beginning to want to pilot with AI and automation systems. But there's a lot of concern around that. How do you do it? Why do they fail? So if you're in the Oracle ecosystem already, it's super simple because Oracle OCI has built its AI service and data platform components, again, on OCI, and it's built it from the ground up, tying into all the same enterprise-ready corporate structured governance and controls. Okay, so whether it's networking, security, storage, compute, and so on, it's built that way from the ground up to leverage OCI's underlying technologies and solutions. So it really means it becomes enterprise grade security and compliance and governance controls are already built in. You don't have to go think about how do I protect my AI agent from getting someplace else, like those cool Okta commercials we all saw back in the Super Bowl time, right? So organizations that want to start experimenting with AI without building everything from scratch or taking unnecessary risks, OCI, in my mind, is a super practical way to start. So this stuff isn't theoretical, folks. These are real patterns that we're seeing, real adoption strategies we're seeing, and real use cases that we're experiencing every day. So by now, I'm hoping you have a clear picture of what OCI is, how it's structured, how it's being used, how it's being unseen, but there. Okay. The next question becomes really, when should you actually pause and take a closer look at it? Don't move to it, not commit to it, but when should you begin to evaluate it? And there again are a few moments or a few opportunities that we see on a regular basis where it tends to come up naturally, not a forced conversation. First, when you're deciding where enterprise or Oracle workloads should run, not saying SaaS applications, but maybe on-premise legacy applications. If you're an Oracle customer with anything on-premise and you're evaluating options for modernization journeys, this is a natural point to include OCI in the conversation, especially if you're road mapping out your infrastructure or technology stack, knowing that maybe your goal is SaaS up here, but maybe that's a 3 to 5 year plan. Okay. We do a lot of this with Hyperion legacy customers. They're moving to EPM Cloud SaaS. It's on their list of things to do or evaluate new SaaS vendors for some of their consolidation reporting systems, but they're not there yet. OCI is a great way, a stopgap, get you off your aging data center infrastructure and move you up into something more cloud-esque and protected. Secondly, when you're looking at new initiatives, new applications, new environments, new technology stacks, new platforms, anything new, anytime you're starting fresh, throw OCI into the ring. Can we use this? Can we leverage it? Are there benefits to using some of their services and technology solutions available? Third, when you're thinking or rethinking or thinking about disaster recovery, it's amazing how many companies don't have business continuity plans, or if they have them, they haven't dusted them off in the past 10 years or so. Okay. So DR is a great way to begin thinking about maybe OCI as an option for a practical and cost-effective solution to handle your DR needs. And fourth, when you're expanding again into a multi-cloud type environment. Almost all organizations are heading into some kind of multi-cloud environment, even if you're an on-premise data center owned company today. When looking at cloud, you're not looking at one cloud or one vendor. You want multiple vendors. That actually, from my perspective, is the right way of doing any kind of cloud implementation. Don't put all your eggs in one basket anywhere you go with enterprise systems. So from multi-cloud perspective, OCI fits very well into that model because they are integrated now with all the big players out there. You have to shift away from what you're already designing or working with. Now, there's one more scenario I want to bring up. And honestly, this has become, I'd say, in the last 6 months, one of the most talked about scenarios and use cases that we're seeing when customers are evaluating OCI or looking for technology solutions for the cloud. It's a very serious problem that we're facing today. I call it the VMware problem. Okay. You may or may not know VMware at one point in time controlled 80% of the global, that's worldwide virtualization market, which means everyone had their servers and their data centers or their closets, like I used to have a small company years ago, running VMware on that. And that was my virtualization model. It basically gave birth to virtualization in essence. Okay. So several years back, Broadcom acquired VMware, and almost immediately they restructured a licensing model. Organizations that have been on multi-year agreements with VMware specifically are now hitting renewal cycles under Broadcom, and they don't care how big or small you are, it is a flat, here's your new price, cost increases of 3 times, 5 times, even 10 times annual expenditure to run VMware on-premise now. This has caught most companies completely off guard in terms of how this works and what happens because the communication was not very clear to both IT and finance, part of the operation. Oracle's developed a really great answer to this problem, and I'm not tooting their horn because all the vendors have something similar. Oracle's, however, in my opinion, is the simplest and most cost-effective version or a model of this. It's a migration path into OCI from on-premise VMware that addresses this VMware displacement problem specifically. It's targeted for that. And we're seeing in practice that clients who do decide to try this move or evaluate this move, they're not only escaping their cost increases, but they're actually coming out ahead in their overall infrastructure investment, sometimes significantly between license and hardware costs. So something to think about. If that situation sounds familiar, or maybe you haven't heard about that, but you think you might be using VMware, go back and begin asking those conversations about that VMware problem and what the solution or what the options are. Okay. I'm available to reach out afterward if you want. I'm happy to share my experiences in conversation. Okay. So again, it's not about making decisions today about moving to OCI. It's about recognizing there are opportunities and when it might be worth taking a closer look at it. So once you decide to actually include OCI in part of your conversation, what do you do there? Like what actually happens? Okay. So this is where we get a little more concrete in things. Let's start with cost, specifically storage and networking, because this is worth spending a little time on talking about this topic. The two biggest costs for any cloud migration or any kind of a cloud implemented solution are going to be data transfer and storage, hands down every single time. Now, that case has changed a bit when it comes to the GPU and the AI need and whatnot, but the reality is comparing any of these platforms, their costs for GPUs, which are the processors running AI applications, they're about the same. I mean, honestly, not much wiggle room there. But the biggest costs still tend to be data transfer and data storage, right? So on both of these, this is where I don't have to believe, I know it's a fact, OCI stands out dramatically from the rest. Oracle storage services are the best performing or highest performing and the lowest cost per gigabyte than any major cloud provider. Not even a close race. Anybody who's not sure about that, reach out. I can explain to you how to do a calculator. You can see for yourself what the costs are going to be, and it's going to blow your mind. On the networking side, Oracle doesn't charge for something called egress traffic, the first 10 terabytes a month. Now, egress traffic, I said I wasn't getting techie today, I apologize. But egress traffic is anything leaving the cloud to come back on premise to your data centers, your local VPNs connections, your working from home network. Okay. All the vendors don't charge for anything coming in, but anything going out, they all charge. Now, Oracle gives you 10 terabytes a month of traffic for free, which is an astronomical amount of traffic. Okay. Um, every other provider meters that cost. It is expensive. We had there's actually a government entity up in Canada. We did a project for 3 years ago. We moved them from on-premise to Azure. They got their initial bills after the first 6 months, and they literally came back on-premise within a year's time. because their bill was costing them for network traffic 3 times their annual spend of buying new hardware. It's that expensive. Okay. So the one difference alone, that cost savings, right? That comes to a big portion of that 30% average savings I mentioned to you when we see clients move their workloads to OCI. Beyond the cost, other reasons why teams look at OCI closer from our experience, it's network architecture. OCI uses this flatter concept of network design. It reduces a lot of the latency in between components. It also allows a better level of security for you, right? OCI is one of the lowest, again, internal network latency scores amongst cloud providers. And for enterprise workloads and applications, that's not minor. That's a huge thing. Performance between systems needs to be top notch. That flat network understanding, again, built after the fact from all the other vendors that are out there, does help drive more adoption for OCI as far as network viability is concerned. On the security side of the house, OCI, as I keep mentioning this over and over, it was built with a strong isolation model from the very beginning, something called zero access, which means by default, you deploy something, no one can do anything with it. It wasn't bolted on after the fact. Security started that way. So the platform was designed and architected initially with the zero access model in mind. All the other vendors later adopted this model, so it's available everywhere, right? But we started that way with OCI. It was not something an afterthought, it was a pre-thought. And that shows up daily in how tenants actually can run their environments, how they're isolated from each other, even within their own ecosystems. So it's structured that way out of the box. Um, Last point about why I see teams often looking at OCI a little bit closer, it's performance for the enterprise and specifically Oracle workloads. Okay. Oracle runs better on Oracle. I'm sure you hear Larry Ellison say this before, and it's true. Okay. It's very straightforward. Any Oracle product will run better and more cost effectively on OCI than any other vendors out there if it's deployed properly. We've done multiple performance comparison tests for different applications and cost to performance analysis across client environments. OCI consistently, from our experience, comes out on top of those two categories. Not a positioning statement or marketing collateral. We have data that actually shows this firsthand. So these are some of the key areas where OCI tends to stand out when teams begin to evaluate it. Okay, I'm not saying that OCI is always the right answer, but there probably are some reason why it deserves to be in the conversation at some point. Oops, sorry about that. My PowerPoint stuck here. Okay. All right. So let's start to wrap this up and keep things simple because I committed to 30 minutes and I'm over that. So that's my bad. I talk a lot. I'm sorry. What should you actually do with what we've covered today? So start by identifying where OCI may already exist within your environment. Again, in many cases, it's already there someplace, just not showing up. Okay. So you haven't been thinking about it. This is the first step. Just become aware of it. It's out there someplace. From there, bring OCI into any kind of architecture conversations, not as a replacement, not as a mandate, like this AI mandate nowadays, just as an option on the table to consider, something to evaluate alongside other platforms when decisions are already being made anyway. Throw OCI in the ring and see what happens. Okay. When new initiatives come up, always treat it as an opportunity to compare. Use it. There's cost calculators Oracle puts that are open, free to the internet. You can literally plug in what you have today and get an estimated cost on how this works. And again, I'm happy to show you folks how to do that. Reach out. I can show you where it is and how to use it. It's a piece of cake. That's really where the value begins to come in because now you have a story around cost. So please reach out. Happy to talk you through that process. Finally, get yourself hands-on wherever you can. OCI has a free tier. It has a range of always free services. Even small experiments or pilots will do more for understanding any webinar, including this one, about OCI and what it can and can't do for you. That's where things really begin to click in my mind when you're getting some actual hands-on exposure to these tool sets. Okay. And if you're planning to attend Kscope this year, I'll be doing a deeper session on when OCI makes sense. And just as importantly, when it does not make sense. Okay. So I'd love to see you guys there. So please, we'll both what we cover today and go further down that road during the conference. So the goal here is simple. Understand it, recognize where it fits, and start evaluating where it makes sense. So quick shout out. I know most of you are probably already familiar with this, thing called Kscope. I'm sure you'll be getting your emails at least twice a month like I have from ODTUG, which is a great conference. But I do want to call attention specifically in the context of OCI. This year, at the conference at Kscope, they actually have a noticeably stronger focus on OCI. Last year, they announced a new communique dedicated toward OCI with an OD tug. At last count, I saw this week around 25 or so sessions, including what I'm doing around OCI directly, and a bunch of other ones, at least a dozen more I saw that are going to be talking about OCI as part of those presentations. There's definitely a significant portion of conversation focusing on OCI. Okay, it's a topic that a couple of years ago, Oracle professionals were like, "What's going on?" Even though it's been here for 10 years, right? So it's a good thing. It's getting some attention right now. So if you're attending, please check out the OCI track, and more importantly, please come find me or someone from my team, and please say hello. I love face-to-face connections with people. Okay, so um, I'm going to leave this QR code up here on the screen here, and we can kind of open up for some Q&A right now. If today was useful and you want some more information on OCI or details, scan the QR code, takes you to a webpage that has a slide deck. Of course, this recording and stuff will all be within OD Tug as well under your membership out there. But there's some key takeaways out here, some curated resources I put together that I think will help you learn OCI at your own pace. And again, whether you're just starting to think about OCI already or in the middle of evaluation, we're always happy to share our experiences and what we're seeing with deployments. No agenda, just a conversation. So no pressure at all. Resource, if it's there, hopefully it's helpful to you folks. I'll show my contact information on the next slide in a couple of seconds here. But with that, I'm ready to open up for any questions if there are any. All right. Well, I'm not seeing any questions pop up, which means either everybody's enjoying their lunch, which is the intention, or the material was hopefully entertaining and good for you folks. Again, I just want to say thank you for your time. I appreciate it. I know everybody's very busy nowadays. My contact info is right here, as well as back on that QR page out there as well. Please drop a line, and I hope to see some of you at Kscope this year. Have a wonderful day, everybody.